On June 25, 1975, India, the world's largest democracy, took a drastic turn. The country, known for its vibrant democratic traditions and diverse political landscape, suddenly found itself under an unprecedented state of internal emergency. Prime Minister Indira Gandhi declared a state of internal emergency, citing threats to national security and the need to restore order amidst growing political unrest. This plunged the nation into a 21-month period of darkness, fear, and authoritarian rule. The streets, once bustling with activity, became eerily quiet as curfews were imposed and dissent was swiftly crushed. This period remains a stark reminder of the fragility of democratic institutions. The Indian Parliament, a symbol of the nation's democratic ethos, was overshadowed by the heavy hand of authoritarianism. It serves as a cautionary tale about the dangers of unchecked power. The very foundations of the Indian Constitution were tested as civil liberties were curtailed and judicial independence was compromised. The emergency was a watershed moment in India's post-independence history. It galvanized citizens from all walks of life to stand up against oppression and fight for their rights. It marked the only time when fundamental rights were suspended. Thousands were arrested without trial, and the press was heavily censored, leading to a climate of fear and uncertainty. Civil liberties were suppressed, and the press was muzzled. Journalists faced the daunting task of reporting under severe restrictions, with many choosing to self-censor to avoid repercussions. The government resorted to authoritarian measures in the name of national security and stability. These measures included mass sterilizations, forced evictions, and the suspension of political activities. The events of those 21 months continue to haunt India's collective memory. Candlelight vigils and public discussions serve as a testament to the enduring impact of this dark chapter. The legacy of the emergency is complex and multifaceted. It exposed the vulnerabilities within the political system and highlighted the need for robust safeguards to protect democratic values. It led to a deep-rooted distrust of the ruling Congress Party. The actions taken during the emergency left a lasting scar on the party's reputation, leading to significant political shifts in the years that followed. This paved the way for the rise of opposition forces. Political leaders and parties that had been sidelined found new support and momentum, reshaping the political landscape of the country. It also sparked a nationwide debate on the importance of safeguarding civil liberties and democratic values. The discourse around individual freedoms and state power became more pronounced and urgent. The emergency became a turning point, forcing India to confront the challenges of balancing national security with individual freedoms. The lessons learned during this period continue to influence contemporary political thought and policy. The emergency was a dark chapter in India's democratic journey. It highlighted the resilience of the Indian people and their unwavering commitment to democratic principles. It underscored the constant need to remain vigilant in protecting democratic values. The Indian flag, a symbol of unity and freedom, stood as a reminder of the nation's enduring spirit. It serves as a reminder that the price of liberty is eternal vigilance. The events of the emergency continue to serve as a powerful lesson in the importance of safeguarding democracy for future generations. The declaration of emergency wasn't an isolated event. It was a significant moment in Indian history that reflected the intense political and legal turmoil of the time. It was a culmination of various political and legal challenges that Indira Gandhi's government faced. The political landscape was fraught with tension, and the government was under immense pressure from multiple fronts. The roots of the crisis could be traced back to the 1971 elections. These elections were a turning point, setting the stage for the events that would unfold in the following years. Indira Gandhi had swept to power with a resounding majority on a wave of popular support. Her victory was seen as a mandate for her policies and leadership. However, this victory was soon overshadowed by accusations of electoral malpractice. Allegations of corruption and unfair practices began to surface, casting a shadow over her triumph. In 1975, the Allahabad High Court found Indira Gandhi guilty of electoral irregularities. This verdict was a significant blow to her political career and credibility. The court invalidated her election and barred her from holding public office for 6 years. This decision created a political crisis, shaking the very foundations of her government. This verdict sent shockwaves through the political establishment. It was a moment of reckoning for Indira Gandhi and her supporters. Opposition parties demanded her resignation. They saw the court's decision as an opportunity to challenge her authority and push for political change. Faced with mounting pressure, Indira Gandhi chose a path that would have far-reaching consequences. Instead of stepping down, she decided to take drastic measures to maintain her grip on power. Instead of stepping down, she invoked Article 352 of the Indian Constitution. This article allowed for the declaration of a state of emergency on grounds of internal disturbance. This article allowed for the declaration of a state of emergency on grounds of internal disturbance. It was a controversial move that would change the course of Indian politics. On the night of June 25, 1975, India entered a dark period in its history. The emergency was declared, and with it came a wave of repression and control. The declaration of emergency was met with mixed reactions. Some saw it as a necessary step to maintain order, while others viewed it as an attack on democracy. While some supported Indira Gandhi's actions, citing national security concerns, others saw it as a blatant power grab. The nation was divided, and the political climate became increasingly volatile. The emergency marked a turning point in Indian politics, setting the stage for a period of authoritarian rule and suppression of dissent. It was a time of great upheaval and change, the effects of which are still felt today. While political turmoil played a significant role in the emergency, India was grappling with a multitude of economic and security challenges. The early 1970s was a period of global economic instability. The oil crisis of 1973 had sent shockwaves through the Indian economy, leading to soaring inflation and widespread unemployment. The government's economic policies, often criticized as socialist and inefficient, had further exacerbated the situation. Food shortages, rampant poverty, and labor unrest had become commonplace. The economic crisis created a sense of despair and anger among the masses, fueling social unrest and political instability. On the security front, India faced threats both internally and externally. The 1971 war with Pakistan, while a decisive victory, had left the country's resources depleted. The Naxalite movement, a Maoist insurgency, was gaining ground in several states, posing a serious threat to internal security. The government argued that these challenges necessitated strong measures, justifying the declaration of emergency. The economic and security concerns, while real, were often used by Indira Gandhi's government to justify the suppression of dissent and the curtailment of civil liberties. The emergency became a convenient tool to silence opposition and consolidate power in the face of mounting challenges. Section 4. The Iron Fist, Declaring Emergency Rule. With the stroke of a pen, Indira Gandhi ushered in an era of authoritarian rule. This decision would have far-reaching consequences for the nation, altering the course of its democratic journey. The emergency, declared on the grounds of internal disturbance, granted the government sweeping powers. Streets were patrolled by police, and a sense of fear and uncertainty gripped the nation. Fundamental rights were suspended, censorship was imposed, and political opponents were arrested en masse. The very fabric of democracy seemed to be unraveling. The government argued that these drastic measures were necessary to restore order and maintain national unity. They claimed that the nation was under threat and that strong actions were essential. One of the most draconian measures was the imposition of press censorship. Newspapers were forced to leave blank spaces where articles critical of the government would have been. Newspapers were prohibited from publishing anything that could be deemed critical of the government. The free press, a cornerstone of democracy, was effectively muzzled. Journalists who dared to defy the censorship faced harassment, intimidation, and even imprisonment. The media landscape was transformed into one of fear and compliance. The government sought to control the narrative, presenting a sanitized version of events to the public. Propaganda became a tool to shape public perception. The emergency also witnessed a crackdown on opposition political parties. Leaders were detained, and their voices were stifled. Leaders were arrested, and political meetings and rallies were banned. The political landscape was eerily quiet, devoid of dissent. The government used the Maintenance of Internal Security Act, or MISA, to detain people without trial. This act became a symbol of the state's unchecked power. Thousands of political activists, trade unionists, and student leaders were imprisoned, their voices silenced. The spirit of resistance was crushed under the weight of authoritarianism. The declaration of emergency marked a dark chapter in India's democratic history. It was a period that tested the resilience of the nation's democratic institutions. It demonstrated how easily a democratically elected government could transform into an authoritarian regime. The balance of power was precarious and the consequences were profound. The emergency served as a stark reminder of the importance of safeguarding civil liberties and the rule of law. It underscored the need for vigilance in protecting democratic values. Section 5. Human rights violations. A stain on India's conscience. The period of emergency witnessed widespread human rights violations. The government's disregard for civil liberties and its use of coercive measures left deep scars on the nation's conscience. One of the most controversial programs was the forced sterilization campaign spearheaded by Sanjay Gandhi, Indira Gandhi's son. Under the guise of population control, millions of men, mostly from poor and marginalized communities, were subjected to forced vasectomies. The campaign was marred by allegations of coercion, intimidation, and medical negligence. Thousands of men suffered serious health complications, and there were even reports of deaths due to botched procedures. Another dark chapter of the emergency was the slum clearance drive in Delhi. Under the supervision of Sanjay Gandhi, thousands of slums were demolished, rendering millions homeless. The residents, mainly migrants from impoverished rural areas, were often forcibly evicted and relocated to resettlement colonies on the outskirts of the city. The emergency was a period of state-sponsored terror and oppression. The government's actions, carried out in the name of national security and development, violated the fundamental rights of its citizens. The legacy of these human rights violations continues to haunt India to this day.